The first human who looked up. Prehistory, fire, darkness, unnamed awe. Long before names existed, before numbers, before the idea of time as something that could be measured, there was a human being standing quietly beneath the sky. No one knows who this person was. They had no title, no written language, not a word yet for star. They stood on cool earth, the ground firm and familiar beneath bare feet, and above them stretched a darkness so wide that it had no edge. The night sky did not rush. It did not sparkle with urgency. It simply existed. Above the human, small points of light rested in the dark, steady, patient, unchanging from one slow breath to the next. The human did not understand what they were seeing. Understanding would come much later. For now, there was only noticing. A quiet lifting of the head, a long pause, a sense not yet shaped into thought that something vast was present. The stars did not move quickly. They did not demand attention. They waited, night after night, as fire crackled low and animals slept. The same light returned. The human began to recognize them, not as objects, but as companions to the darkness. One night, the stars appeared in one pattern. Another night, they appeared again, almost the same but not entirely. The human noticed this without naming it, a feeling of familiarity, soft and repeating. Above them, the sky slowly turned. So slowly it felt still. Yet over many nights, the human sensed that something was changing. A star rose where another had once been. A bright light lingered longer near the horizon. The moon returned again and again, its shape quietly shifting. These changes were not exciting, they were gentle, they were reliable. The sky became a presence, a vast ceiling of calm movement, never hurried, never loud. The human did not feel small yet. That feeling would come later too. For now, there was only quiet attention. They sat, they watched, they breathed. Time passed in a way that had no units. Minutes did not exist, neither did years. The stars were simply there. Eventually, the human began to expect them. The darkness came, and the lights followed. This expectation brought comfort. In a world full of unpredictable sounds and shadows, the sky behaved itself. It returned, it repeated, it stayed. The human did not know it, but this was the beginning of astronomy. Not knowledge, not calculation, but presence. Looking up, waiting, remembering. The stars accepted the gaze without response. They did not explain themselves. They did not move closer. They allowed the human to wonder and then to rest within that wondering. Above the small fire, above the slow rise and fall of breath, the universe continued quietly, unaware that it was being observed. And in that stillness, something subtle began, a relationship between the human mind and the endless sky. The human eventually slept, but the stars remained. They always did. Part 2. Ancient skies and the first quiet patterns. As generations passed, the act of looking upward continued. The human who first noticed the sky was followed by others, and then others still. They did not speak of astronomy, they did not think of science, but they remembered. Children grew beneath the same stars their elders had seen. They listened to quiet stories told by firelight, stories that drifted upward and dissolved into the sky. Over time, the sky became familiar, not understood, but recognized. Certain stars returned in certain seasons. The long nights of cold brought one arrangement of lights. The warmer nights brought yet another. The changes were slow, so slow that no single night felt different. Only memory revealed the pattern. Humans began to wait for the stars, the way they waited for rain, or for the return of animals, or for the soft light of morning. They did not rush the sky, they allowed it to unfold. Eventually, stones were placed, not to control the heavens, but to remember them. A stone aligned with the rising sun, another with the longest night, another stone with a familiar star that appeared low on the horizon. These stones did not speak, they simply stood, patient as the sky itself. When humans returned to them, season after season, they found reassurance. The sky was still doing what it had always done. Above fields and rivers, above hills and empty plains, the stars traced paths that were almost the same, yet never quite identical to one another. The moon became a companion. Its slow, steady changes were easier to notice. It grew, it faded, it disappeared, and it returned. The moon taught humans that change could be trusted. Night after night, people looked up and noticed the same rhythms repeating. They did not name these rhythms yet. They simply lived alongside them. Time was no longer just hunger and sleep. It became a cycle, a turning. The sky was no longer only darkness. It was a guide, quiet and dependable. Some humans began to trace shapes between the stars, not precise shapes, not measured ones, but imagined connections. A line here, another there. A figure appeared, not because it was truly there, but because the human mind enjoyed making sense of the dark. These shapes were not fixed. They shifted from place to place, from culture to culture. But the act itself was the same. Looking up, linking lights, finding familiarity. The sky became a canvas for memory and meaning. Stories formed slowly like fog rolling in. They were not dramatic stories, they were calm explanations for why the light remained when everything else changed. The stars became reminders that some things lasted. Under these ancient skies, humans began to feel both grounded and gently humbled. The earth beneath them was solid, the sky above them was endless. Between the two, life unfolded quietly. No one tried to reach the stars. There was no urgency, only observation. The night sky was not a mystery to solve, it was a presence to live beside. People worked during the day, and at night they rested their eyes on familiar lights. The stars did not interfere, they did not instruct, they simply existed. Slowly, across centuries, humans learned to expect the sky's return. Darkness fell, stars arrived, morning followed, again and again, and once again. This repetition brought comfort. It allowed the mind to relax into something larger than itself. Without knowing it, humans were training their attention, their patience, and their memory. They were becoming observers, not yet astronomers, not yet philosophers, but watchers. Quiet watchers beneath an ancient turning sky. And the stars, unaware of their role, continued their slow, steady paths, unchanged by the small figures below who found peace in simply looking up. Myth, meaning, and the gentle naming of the stars. As time moved forward, slow and almost unnoticeable, humans began to give the sky something new. They gave it names. Not all at once, and not with certainty, but softly, as one might name a familiar place or a recurring dream. The stars themselves did not change. They remained distant, silent, unconcerned, but the way humans spoke of them did. Small clusters of light became figures, not because the stars demanded it, but because the human mind found comfort in recognition. A line of stars suggested a hunter, another suggested an animal resting, another a simple tool used every day on the ground below. These names were not precise. They were not meant to be. They were stories laid gently over the darkness. Different people living under the same sky saw different things. What mattered was not agreement, but connection. The sky was no longer only above, it was woven into daily life, into the daily conversation. A constellation rose, and it meant planting would soon begin. Another appeared, and it meant cold nights were approaching. The stars did not cause these changes, they only accompanied them. Still, humans spoke to the sky as though it listened. We reached up and we spoke to it and felt comfort when doing so, as we still do. They told stories of gods and heroes, not loudly, not with urgency, but with familiarity. These stories explained nothing precisely. They were not meant to. They allowed the unknown to feel less empty. The stars became markers of memory, a reminder of ancestors, a reminder of cycles. When a child asked why the stars returned, an answer was offered, calm, poetic, and loving. The answer did not need to be true, it only needed to soothe. Across deserts and forests, across islands and valleys, the same lights received different names. Yet the feeling was shared. Looking up created a pause, a soft stillness where thought could wander without needing to arrive. Some nights the sky felt close, other nights impossibly far. Both feelings were accepted. No one tried to measure the distance. No one attempted to count the stars. There was no rush. The heavens were not a problem to solve. They were a presence that allowed the mind to reset inside something vast and to rest. Temples were built, altars placed, but always beneath the same sky. The stars watched as rituals formed and faded again. They watched as names changed and languages shifted. They watched without watching. Over centuries, humans began to notice that the sky followed rules, gentle ones. Certain stars always rose together. Certain paths repeated. These rules were not strict, they were forgiving. Even when humans forgot them, the sky continued on. Calendars emerged, not from ambition, but from patience. Days were counted by shadows, months by the moon, years by the return of familiar stars. Still, everything moved slowly. Knowledge grew like moss, thin and quiet, clinging to time. There were no sudden revelations, only accumulation. The stories remained, but alongside them grew a subtle shift, a new way of looking. Not only what does this mean, but what does this do? The stars did not answer. They never had. But the act of asking changed the asker. The sky remained what it had always been, vast, distant, calm. And beneath it, humans continued to lie back, eyes heavy, minds drifting, content to let the universe exist without explanation, even as they slowly, quietly learned how to observe it. Part 4. The first careful observers. As centuries unfolded, as generations passed quietly beneath familiar stars, something subtle began to change. Humans continued to tell stories about the sky, but alongside those stories grew a quieter habit. They began to watch with intention, not with urgency, not with ambition, but with care. The sky was no longer only admired, it was noted, it was appreciated. Marks were made in clay, lines were pressed into stone, simple symbols recorded where a star appeared and when. These early records were not exact. They were not meant to be. They were reminders, gentle attempts to hold time still for just one moment longer. In places where rivers rose and fell, humans learned that the sky could offer hints. A certain star returned, and the waters would soon swell. Another disappeared, and the land grew dry. The stars themselves caused none of this. They simply arrived on schedule. And schedule, humans learned, was valuable. In quiet rooms, lit by oil lamps and patience, observers watched the sky night after night after night. They did not call themselves astronomers. They were scribes, priests, monks, caretakers of memory. They sat still. They waited. Their eyes learned the rhythm of darkness and light. They noticed that some lights wandered. Most stars stayed in place, returning faithfully each year. But a few drifted slowly against the background. These wandering lights were not frightening. They were curious. They moved gently without explanation. Humans gave them names too, but quieter ones. Names meant to track, not to mythologize. The sky became something that could be returned to. Last night compared to this night, this season compared to the last. Time stretched. No one expected answers quickly. Understanding was allowed to be slow. Some observers lived entire lives without seeing a single pattern completed. They recorded anyway. Their work was not for themselves, it was for those who came later. Tables were drawn, angles estimated, positions compared. The sky remained patient. Under domes open to the night air, humans learned to separate story from movement. Myth continued, but beside it grew something quieter. Description. Not why the stars moved, but how. The language of the sky became careful. Words were chosen to avoid excitement. Numbers appeared, not to dominate, but to assist memory. Still, everything remained calm. No one felt powerful. No one felt in control. The universe did not shrink under observation. It grew larger. The more carefully the sky was recorded, the more expansive it seemed. Each measurement revealed how little was understood, and so observation continued, patient and humble. Across civilizations, separated by distance but united by the dark, people looked up and wrote quietly. The same stars, the same moon, the same slow turning of life and time. The sky became a shared text, read differently by many, but always open to all. And through this slow practice, human attention deepened, as it does. Not sharpened, not hardened, but softened. It became a part of us. The sky was no longer only a backdrop, it was a companion to thought. And though no one realized it yet, these careful observers were laying the groundwork for a new way of knowing. one that would continue to grow forever without ever needing to hurry. Part 5. Instruments, ink, and quiet progress. Time passed, not in leaps, but in layers. The sky remained unchanged, yet the way humans met it grew more refined. Observation became a practice handed down, not spoken loudly, not celebrated, but taught through patience. Simple tools appeared, not machines, not wonders, but extensions of the eye and the hand and the mind. A straight rod to mark a shadow, a bowl of water to mirror the stars, a ring of metal aligned with the horizon. These instruments did not reveal secrets, they clarified moments. They allowed the observer to return to the same point again and again. Ink replaced memory. Parchment replaced guesswork. Charts grew denser, not with answers, but with care. Lines crossed lines. Margins filled with notes. Corrections were added quietly, without shame. Mistakes were expected. They were part of the process. No one demanded certainty, only consistency. In quiet rooms, far from the noise of trade and war, the sky was copied night after night. Some observers worked alone. Others worked in small groups, passing knowledge gently from one hand to another. The stars were patient teachers, as they've always been. They returned as promised. They followed paths that could be traced. The moon's cycles were recorded again and again, until familiarity replaced wonder. Eclipses arrived without warning, then later with expectation. The sky began to feel noble, though never fully known. Across cultures, names changed, symbols differed, but the sky remained the same. A chart drawn in one place could be understood in another by someone else. The heavens became a shared reference. Still, progress was quiet. No announcements were made, no declarations. Knowledge accumulated like sediment at the bottom of a river, slowly, almost invisibly. Observers aged, students replaced them, but the work continued. The sky did not reward effort, it did not respond to dedication. Yet humans returned, night after night, drawn by something steady. Not excitement, not ambition, a sense that watching mattered. Through ink and patience, the sky became familiar, without becoming small. Each new mark on the page expanded the universe. Each correction acknowledged how much remained unknown. And so the work continued, quietly, carefully, without urgency. The stars traced their paths, and humans traced them back. Neither rushed, neither needed to. Part 6. The telescope and the widening view. For a long time, the sky was known only as far as the eye could reach. Human vision, patient and careful, had done all it could. And then, quietly, the eye was given help. The first lenses were simple, glass shaped with care, held up to the night without expectation. No one knew what would appear. No one assumed revelation. But when the telescope turned upward, the sky did not change its tone. It remained calm, but it did grow deeper. Stars that had once been points became clusters, soft gatherings of light where emptiness had been assumed. The moon, once smooth and distant, revealed texture, shadows within shadows within shadows, gentle variations of surface. There was no shock, only attention and small titillation. Observers adjusted the lens. They leaned closer. They looked again. They smiled. The sky had not transformed. It had simply offered more of itself to us. Night after night, the telescope returned to the same places, the familiar spaces. Familiar stars gained subtle complexity, dark spaces filled with faint light. What had once seemed complete was revealed as partial. This did not diminish the sky, it expanded it. Some observers hesitated, others continued. The wandering lights, once mysterious, now showed shape and motion more clearly. They moved, not randomly, but gently, along paths that could be followed. Still, the sky refused the drama. Discoveries arrived quietly, as realizations rather than announcements. The universe did not shout, it whispered. Ink continued to flow, pages filled with careful sketches, with annotations made in the margins beneath the moonlight. All charts were not discarded, they were amended. What came before was not wrong, it was incomplete. There was more. The telescope did not replace the eye, it extended it, it widened it. Humans learned that knowing more did not bring control, it brought humility. Each new detail revealed how much remained unseen. The stars were no longer only lights. They became distant suns, places too far to reach, yet undeniably present. The sky grew colder, larger, more spacious, and yet the feeling beneath it remained the same. A human stood, or sat, or leaned against a wall looking upward, breathing slowly, thinking softly and deeply. The telescope did not remove wonder, it deepened it. The night sky, once a ceiling, became an opening. Not an opening to be crossed, but one to be contemplated. The universe expanded without losing its calm, and the observers, aware now of their smallness, continued to watch, not because answers were near, but because looking still felt right. Part 7. Modern Understanding in Quiet Vastness. As time moved forward, knowledge expanded in wide, patient arcs. The sky, once traced by eye and ink, began to be described in deeper layers. Numbers grew larger, distances stretched beyond imagination, yet the tone remained unchanged, calm, measured, unhurried. Wonder. Humans learned that stars were not fixed points, but distant suns, each with its own quiet existence. Some burned brightly, others dimmed slowly. All followed lifetimes far longer than human memory. The universe revealed its scale without emphasis. Light itself became a traveler, moving calmly across space, taking years, centuries, millennia to arrive. When humans looked up, they were not seeing the present. They were seeing echoes. This realization did not disturb the night. It softened it. The sky became layered with time. Galaxies appeared, not as sharp forms, but as gentle smudges of light. Entire collections of stars drifted together, held by forces that did not rush. The universe was no longer a single sky, but many, nested within one another. Still, observation remained quiet. Instruments grew more precise, mirrors larger, sensors more sensitive. Yet the human posture did not change. Someone always stood beneath the stars, hands still, breath steady, eyes lifted. Even with equations and models, the sky resisted final explanation. It did not become familiar. It became expansive. Blackness was no longer empty. It was full of motion, of matter, of slow unfolding. Time itself revealed structure. The universe had a history, not a dramatic one, but a long, gradual cooling one, and a day before the first one. Stars were born, stars faded, nothing hurried. Human understanding grew vast, yet incomplete and wonderful. This incompleteness was accepted. No one expected to hold the universe, only to glimpse it. The night sky retained its ancient role, a place to rest the mind, a place to feel small, without fear. Modern observers knew more than their ancestors, yet felt the same stillness. A quiet recognition that knowledge does not diminish mystery, it deepens it. The universe did not become louder as it grew larger. It became quieter. And beneath this quiet vastness, humans continued to sleep, comforted by the fact that the stars had been there before them and would remain long after. Part 8. Above the earth, looking back. Now the story rises, not away from humanity, but with it. We drift above the slow-turning earth, inside a quiet vessel of metal and light, built by us humans. The International Space Station moves gently through darkness, one silent orbit at a time. Below, the planet breathes. It sighs. Oceans curve softly into night. Clouds gather like sleeping thoughts. Cities glow faintly, tiny constellations of human life. There is no up here. There is no down. Only motion, perpetual, only orbit, at peace. Inside the station, machines hum with a steady patience. Screens glow softly, instruments listen, sensors count photons that have traveled longer than memory. Astronomy now is done with mirrors, mathematics, with lenses polished to impossible smoothness, with telescopes that never blink. Some float in space, far from Earth's trembling air. They unfold like mechanical flowers and stare into the dark. They see heat instead of light. They hear radio whispers from stars long gone. They watch galaxies collide in now slow, graceful spirals. We think of these tools not as cold machines, but as extensions of ancient wonder. Every satellite is a question, every telescope an eye. From this height, Earth itself becomes a planet among planets, a small blue answer, a pale blue dot, in a vast and answered dark. Astronomy today is quiet collaboration. Data moves instead of bodies. Signals travel faster than voices ever could. And yet, the feeling is unchanged. Floating here, watching sunrise sweep across the earth every 90 minutes, we feel the same awe as the first human by the fire. Technology has not replaced wonder. It has carried it higher. The stars outside the station windows do not flicker. They burn steadily, unconcerned with progress, unimpressed by achievement. The station continues its orbit. The Earth continues its turning. And we know this is not the end of looking, only another place from which to look. Part 9. Beyond the sun, into the dark. Now the story leans forward, far beyond the orbit of the moon, beyond the outer planets, beyond the sun's gentle reach. A human travels, not in urgency, not in conquest, in patience. The ship moves through interstellar space, where distances stretch until time itself feels loose, like a thought. The sun is no longer a center, only one star among billions. Ahead, new stars await, not destinations, but companions in passing. From here, the universe does not feel empty. It feels wide. Astronomy has changed again. Observation is no longer done from a single point. The human watches the universe from within it. They see stars not as distant ideas, but as neighbors with a texture and a presence. They pass through clouds of dust that once formed worlds. They measure gravity by feel, by subtle shifts in motion, by the slow bending of paths. Outside the solar system, the sky rearranges itself. Constellations dissolve, new patterns emerge. There is no familiar map now, only motion and relation. The traveler understands that the universe was never fixed. It was always becoming. Looking outward, they see galaxies stretched by expansion, light thinned and reddened by distance. Looking inward, they feel the quiet continuity of being human, still small, still curious, still listening. Perhaps one day observers will look back at the sun as an ancient light, a warm memory in a colder sky. Perhaps observation itself will change, no longer limited by eyes or instruments, but by presence. To observe will mean to pass through, to exist among, to belong briefly. The universe does not resist this watching. It allows it. And as the traveler drifts onward, the story gently turns back toward earth, toward rest, toward the simple act of looking up. Part 10. All of us still looking up. Now, quietly, our story arrives here, not with an ending, but with a return. We exist in a world filled with light at night, with clocks and screens, with names for nearly everything. And still we look up, above rooftops and roads, beyond satellites drifting silently, among the sky. That same sky remains. It is older than language, older than thought, older than the idea of a beginning. We know what the stars are called. We know their distances, their temperatures, their lifetimes. We know that some of the light has traveled for millions of years just to arrive here, now, to us. This knowledge does not rush any of us. It slows time. Standing still, we feel what the first human felt. Not ignorance, but presence, and profound wonder and an expansive sense of belonging. The sky does not ask to be understood. It allows understanding. then gently moves beyond it. We breathe, and the stars do not respond. They never have. Yet there is comfort in this silence. Above, the universe continues its slow expansion, its quiet transformation. Stars are forming somewhere, and stars are fading elsewhere. None of it urgent, none of it loud. We realize that astronomy was never only about knowing. It was about paying attention. It was about belonging, about allowing the mind to stretch and stretch without tension, about accepting the vast scale without fear. The same sky that once guided planting, that inspired stories, that was traced in ink and glass, now rests above this moment. Nothing has been lost. The tools have changed. The questions have deepened. But the act remains the same. We look up. We look into. We pause. We let thought exist. The universe does not need witnesses, and it has always had them. From the first human by a fire to the quiet observer tonight, to you, the connection continues, unbroken, unhurried, eternal. The stars remain what they have always been, distant, steady, indifferent, and forever calming, and beneath them, we allow our eyes to close. The sky does not disappear. It waits for you, like it always has.